Welcome to the show today. Today I have Luis Marcos on the show, and he's the Digital Transformation Officer at Honeywell. And I'm very, very excited to talk to you and hear a bit more about your story and a bit more about your background and some of the exciting things that you're up to right now. So, Luis, maybe let's start right with the story a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the defining moments that really shaped you as a human being, that really shaped you as a leader?
Well, so first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity, Daniel, and I'm very pleased to have a discussion with you in regards to several topics. So yeah, so I was born in Portugal, and I made all my education and studies in Switzerland. I'm living in Geneva, and basically I'm a person who is very, very curious. I like to discover. When I was a child, I wanted to maybe become an astronaut, exploring because of the curiosity, because of the immensity. And basically, one of the things I wanted to myself was basically jumping into a job which is where there are things always new, when you learn, and basically I found out that the high tech, the technology was a good opportunity for me. So it's basically something which keeps me, awake always, because there are always new things. You need to challenge yourself, and basically, and that's basically about it. Now, in terms of my education, well, I have an engineer background. Then I moved into a space, which was a bit more business oriented. So I did an MBA, an executive MBA at a certain point in time. And basically, I've continued to learn. I've continued to make studies in some business schools, Barcelona, in London, in the US, and I'm continuing to learn.
So that's a big one. Curiosity, learning, always learning something new. That's a really important sort of like red thread. Quickly, I want to also talk about people, because very often people are a big component of what shapes us as a human being. Are there some people, particularly in your journey, in your career, in your life, that you feel that really, really shaped you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are maybe two people, one on the private side, the other one on the professional side. I will say that on the private side, I think my wife has been really key, because first of all, she has been always supporting me in my aspirations, in my career, and she has been always behind me. So this is something that has been shaping, Then I had a lot of inspiration from someone who is Yannick. He has been a colleague of mine. He has been a boss and a friend. And I found out that he was really a mentor to me. And I remember many meetings we had where we were in the meeting room, and we were talking about roadmap, strategy, etc. We took the whiteboard, and in a matter of 1 hour we had everything designed. So it was really a fast pace, and extremely exciting, to work with someone like this. And I think we figure out that we were even going, I think, too fast, compared to what the company we were working for could, accommodate. You see. So this was very, very inspiring. Someone who was fast forward thinking, innovation, and at the same time very human.
That's a big one. Yeah, I mean, on both as well. From the private side and also from the business side. I like that you mentioned both aspects. That's I think is very very important. Now, I'm very curious as well, especially about what drives people, and I'd love to learn a bit more about what drives you. So, you're very deep into this topic of digitalization. You've been in this on this journey of the digital transformation many years already. You've done some really interesting things in the past as well. And I'm just curious about, first and foremost, about this topic. What is it about this topic of digital, of this buzzword of digital transformation, about this thing that really, what is it that fascinates you? What is it that drives you in that specific space?
Well, as you said, digital transformation is a big word. I mean, it involves many different aspects, but I think the digital transformation is really about shaping the organization. So this includes people because they are part of the organization, and you need people to make things happen. Then there's a technology aspect as well, and I will say that the digital transformation is really about being in a position at a certain point in time to be agile. I mean, agile means that you are required to make decisions faster. I mean, you are required to introduce a product faster, faster services, etc. If you are not agile enough, your competition is going to do it, right? So I think digital transformation is really about creating awareness within the organization about what needs to happen, right? And at the same time to make it happen. So it's about creating business cases and ensuring that these business cases can at a certain point in time take off and fly.
Yeah, so it's a massive change basically that excites you, the big change in the organization, the impact that it has along the journey, along the way. On a more general level, I mean, in business, every day you get to face interesting challenges, sometimes not easy ones, juggle all kinds of different things. What is it that gets you out of bed every morning? Like, what is it that gets you to go out there and do the work you do every single day?
Well, basically, it's every day is a different day, I believe. So I'm always looking, to challenge the status quo, to find new things, and I will say that these days are all very different because I think I'm a person who is taking risks. I want to do things differently, and I mean, the passion I have is basically about making things happen, if you wish. So, yeah.
So basically, it's about making things happen, getting things done, building things. So, I mean, where does that come from? Do you think it's the curiosity? Is there something else in making things happen, or maybe more specifically, what does making things happen mean for you specifically? Like, what is that? If you had to paint a picture of what does that mean, making things happen?
Well, making things happen means that I give you a concrete example, maybe to illustrate what I would like to say. I took over a project which has been on the table for 5 years, and which was not necessarily moving at the right pace, etc. So when I took over this project, I started to understand, what it is about, what are the pain points, what is the as-is situation, and where we want to be, right? And I found out that basically the challenge here, it has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with ensuring that you create the appropriate awareness within the company, ensuring that everybody is on the same page. So and basically the creation of this awareness is really about mobilizing people, discussing with people, making sure that we speak the same language, that showing the benefits, and you see this is more the human relationship, right? Rather than anything else. So I will say that having an environment which is stimulating, which is not static, because I have a tendency to be bored, right? If it's always the same thing. So I need really to find out new opportunities, new challenges, and the pleasure, is to make it happen. So making it happen is about having plans and making sure that you work towards the plans.
Yeah, so that's, by the way, a big one that you mentioned there, in terms of it's usually not about technology, it's more about in between the people.
Right.
And that's a really interesting one. Maybe this will come out in the next stage as well, because I'd like to talk a little bit about lessons learned. And I'm sure you learned some interesting lessons along your journey as well. Is there one or two like really big, important lessons that you feel that you learned along the way that made a big impression on you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have something which comes to my mind, which is one of the projects I had in the past, where in the organization we had a big challenge, and we wanted this. We wanted to achieve, the scope of the project, but it was really a big bang, right? So, and I remember that we were continuously defining the scope throughout the project. Okay, so the scope was a moving target, and what I learned is that basically the big bangs never works. In fact, you can think big, yeah, for sure, but then implement incrementally. So you can have a big ambition, right, in terms of transformation, but I think we should go step by step in terms of implementation. And this gives an opportunity as well for the organization to digest, into brackets, if I can call it that way, and move, one step ahead. So little by little.
That's a big one. I guess that's also what many organizations today are trying to achieve when they're going from, 15 months project timelines with all kinds of charts and everything to, well, there's the ambition, there's the goal, there's the vision. And then on the other side, there's sort of the day-to-day and the continuous adjustment and, the weekly sprints and everything. And I think that is where many organizations go. So I feel like many other people learn that lesson as well. It's such a big one, right? It's such a key one. Is there another one that you feel like is really important that you learned along the way?
Well, I think the other lesson is that you might have. I've been working with many software companies, many third-party suppliers, right? But I think at the end, what makes a big difference is working with people that you trust, right? So I think it's something which goes beyond a contract, because if you have a good relationship with people, they listen to you, there is trust, there is openness as well, because you might have a problem. Why don't we speak openly, right? We identify solutions and then we move forward. So yeah, so in my opinion, there is the contractual aspects in everything we do, but I think there is something which goes beyond the contract, which is human relationship. The way you interact with people, distrust, and what I call at the end really a true partnership.
That's a really big one as well. And it kind of like leads us into the next piece, because I'm really curious about how you make that work. So if you're sort of like coming into an organization, or if you're in your team even, and across the organization, if the job is to get people to work together and, have a strong relationship together and create those true partnerships, how do you go about that? Do we have a process of how you walk through that, or how do you deal with all the challenges, the human challenges that come along the way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are many aspects related to that. I mean, you have obviously in the organization, you have change agents and you have people, which don't move ahead, at the same pace. So sometimes it's because I think there's a psychological aspect into that, right? That we need as well to take in consideration. You might have people in the organization for 10 years, 20 years, which are used to work in a specific manner. So the goal is really to bring, I will say, to discuss, to communicate, to understand, what are the obstacles that people are facing, right? And then try to help overcoming these obstacles, because most probably that one of the solution is basically to reassure people. Sometimes you don't want to transform a process in an automated way because you have people behind and they don't want to lose their jobs, right? So I think it's something that we need to take into consideration, because you have different cultures as well. I mean, working for several organizations, there's a lot of diversity. I've been working with people from many different cultures, etc. And you need really to identify a common ground in order to communicate and making sure that everyone is on the same page. So I think this is more the human factor, which I find very fascinating as well.
So how do you find that common ground then? I mean, do you go around and just have coffee with everyone and sort of like have a casual chat? Do you interview people on their obstacles and challenges? Like, how do you go about that?
Yes, right. I think it's a lot of communication. I mean, it's really a lot of communication, discussing with people, and sometimes you understand better people when you are outside of the business environment. I mean, it happens to me to go to a business trip, and then we go for dinner. And then we discuss about many other things, which creates, a different relationship as well. So, but most of the time, it's about communicating, listening to people as well. Listening, I think it's one of the qualities which are required as well. Know how to listen and yeah.
That's a big one. Knowing how to listen. That is so key. I mean, it's not. I mean, it sounds like so simple, and I think it's sometimes too simple that we overcomplicate it, and we try and if we're trying too hard to listen, we're actually not listening. That's another, I think, aspect of it. It's really interesting. So once again, going back to this place of the transformation from a human perspective, so you go out there and you talk to people and you understand them and you listen and you figure things out. And then I'm imagining you have this collection of data points, right? This collection of information around, what people want, their obstacles and all these kinds of things. What do you do with that then? I mean, is there like, how do you get from that point then to, I guess, the actions, how do you go from there to actually, making, as you mentioned before, making things happen?
Well, first of all, in this communication aspect, it's really, as I said before, communicating and identifying what are the pain points, what are the issues we are facing, and how we can improve the situation. I give you an example where basically there are many processes, for instance, which requires manual intervention, right? So this is taking time. I always strive for agility, for automation, moving as fast as we can, right? And for this, I'm always seeking about making sure that we have real-time, integration between solutions, for instance, and making sure that we automate as much as possible by removing, whatever manual intervention or human intervention we have in the middle. So, for example, to translate some of the products, for example, you have in an organization, if you have to rely on human intervention to translate the products, I mean, this might take a while, right? So if you want to introduce a new product in the Netherlands or in another country, it might take you a while if you have to introduce, several products, right? Whereas if you try to automate this translation, and even though the machine translation might not be 100%, I will say efficient, at least if you can achieve 80% and the remaining 20% is still human, I think it's a big step forward. So I'm always thinking on how can I improve, how can I help the organization moving faster, making decisions faster, creating a competitive advantage in the market in a faster manner. So it's always this, the speed. I think the speed which makes a big difference, in my opinion.
That's a big one, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I want to stay there for a second because I think there's some interesting things that you're currently working on. What are some of the most exciting things right now that are on your plate that you're most excited about?
Oh yeah, so I will say that, for instance, eCommerce is a big piece, and in order to do e-commerce on the B2B, B2C, you really need to provide to the consumer or to your customers, an entire, I will say, a 360 customer experience, right? So in the past, we have been talking about, omni-channel, etc. Now there's a tendency, to seek for unified commerce where you can provide this experience. But in order to achieve this, I mean, you need really to have a good strategy in terms of the way you manage your product information. So this means, centralizing the fact sheets of your product, trying to provide, for example, a video on how to use the product, because more and more people are using or consuming, on autonomous or self-service type of experience, right? So having your digital assets, in a centralized manner, automating as much as possible, this process for product translations, things like that, you will then be in a position, I believe, to syndicate this content to many different channels you like. One of it can be e-commerce, and this is basically one of the challenges I have today, which is really to centralize, to harmonize the way we manage product information, and then to become, in terms of maturity, to really provide product excellence, product excellence, I will say.
That's a big one, yeah, and especially what you mentioned is the 360 experience, the full experience, which is really more about giving the customers what they actually want, because it's I think also, like in the past, it used to be very much, this is what we as an organization want to do, and now it doesn't work anymore if it's not what the customer also exactly wants, right? And all the varieties of what each customer and group and segment individually also wants. And you mentioned this, I guess, in the experience piece, which is like, well, some people just, they're out there on YouTube and they want to find things by themselves, so why not give this to them, right? If it also adds to the brand and everything. And I think that's a big aspect right now of also what you mentioned is really customizing that experience to the actual customer, no matter what that may be, as long as it's in your capability as an organization. That's a really big one. So the last one I want to dive into is a little bit of an up in the clouds question. So let's imagine for a second you're a magician and you got a magic wand in your hand, and you got the genie question, right? You got the genie wish. So if you had any kind of wish, anything you could wish for, what is it that you would wish for that could multiply the impact that you had either on the work you do, on the organization, or the industry, or the world as a whole?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think there's more and more conscious, right, that the way we consume, the way we operate as humans, has a big impact on the environment, right? So I think we really need to become conscious at different levels. And I've seen countries who are making a lot of efforts, to make a difference, and some others obviously who are in a development type mode, right? Which are facing big challenges, I will say. So I think it's up to the developed countries as well to help these developing countries to find a better solution in regards to the environment. So I think this is one of the biggest challenge I believe we will have we have today and in the years to come. And I think we need to ensure that we find a solution, to protect the planet, because the resources are becoming very scarce, right? And I think it's something that we need all to be conscious about.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a very big one on a global scale. So thank you for, going into that as well and sharing this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to link below this video to some sources. One is the company page, so people can check out what's going on, some of the exciting things that are happening on the company side, but then also your LinkedIn profile, so people can, stay in touch, learn what you're up to also personally in your career. And then also, of course, connect, right? That's another piece. So we're going to link to these sources below the video. And Luis, thank you so much once again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for the opportunity, and thank you for the exchange.